thank you, Orlando, for opening this space for me and for everyone listening. I think there's a lot to be gained when we share our stories and just a little bit about myself. Right now, I call myself an evaluator. I'm a researcher, a social researcher, and program evaluator that is focused on equity, justice, and culturally responsive evaluation, which entails looking at power structures and putting the concerns and the needs of the people and the community first in any evaluation that I'm doing with the group. I have been close to the community for many years. I think the first thing that I needed to say was that I am from Puerto Rico and I grew up over there and studied all my schooling in a public school in Puerto Rico. Went on to the public University of Puerto Rico, and that was best times of my life for sure. I think there was a lot to gain from that experience, and I have a lot to share with you all about that time and how it speaks to how I see the world now and what is my practice for sure.
When it comes to thinking about those moments that activated you and set you on a path for pursuing social justice, one of those moments that you mentioned was the teacher strike in 2013.
First, I want to share that I come from a family of teachers. So my grandmother was a teacher, my mom and my dad, my uncles, my great granduncles, they're all involved in education in Puerto Rico. Somehow they were, my dad was like mechanical engineering, art. My mom is an English teacher. My grandma, she taught everyone in Rincon, my hometown. So I was always involved in education and learning. And that was a lot of what I've done through life is because of that start in my
Mm.
family. And truly, a lot had to happen for me to get into understanding what was happening with the teachers at that time. And it became clear to me at that point that part of my purpose that I chose for myself in life was to truly be in solidarity with other groups. And I understood it so clearly. Of course, here in Chicago and in the many parts of the US, teachers are very much I don't know how to say it. Just, they're not having the best time, and in Puerto Rico, definitely education has been infinite place of content and also just overall policies against the working class in Puerto Rico. At that time, they were imposing a few new laws around taxation in Puerto Rico. But the teachers specifically, what was happening at that time was that the retirement fund of the teachers was being privatized. And the government wanted it to get it into Wall Street, basically, with
Yeah.
the interest and all of that. And the teachers fought for that because they were the ones who created that fund for themselves. And it was like part of it was an actual fight, something that they won through fighting for better conditions overall. So at that time, I was really starting to get involved in the socialist movement in Puerto Rico, especially through the youth that was working at the University of Puerto Rico. I was already pretty close to them through research and through just professors that we knew and like-minded people. But at the same time, I wasn't truly involved in activism. I was just like, yeah, I'll go somewhere if you need me, but I wasn't organizing anything or thinking too much about it. But at that time, I started to study on my own and with the group that I was part of, that was Juventud, oh my God, I just Juventud Socialista, Socialist Youth. I don't remember the name right now. Then we were just literally finding time in the weekends, during the day, in the afternoons, to read stuff that you don't get to read in academia. And a lot of the things that I wrote, that I read about was the history of the political movements in Puerto Rico, which was eye opening because in school you're not truly getting in any depth about that in history, in classes or anything like that. So it was very much a learning experience, and that got me to be closer to the teacher movement as well. And a lot of the people that I knew that were part of the socialist movement in Puerto Rico were also part of the teachers movement. So we are related in that sense. So on that day, I remember the whole experience truly captured the best and the worst part of being part of activism, because it was the beauty of having people come together and fight, but at the same time it was a defeat for them. It wasn't they didn't won. I remember people just crying, really frustrated, and that really put a lot of perspective in my mind about what we're doing and what we're fighting against, because it wasn't straightforward. It wasn't just, "Oh, we're gonna win. Woo!" Because we know we're gonna win. It was like, "Let's fight to see if we can do something."
Yeah.
But that experience was like building up from many other experiences before that, especially when I was in college. I was close to people and close to the student strike that happened around 2009, 2010. And that was truly the best time in terms of learning about how to engage the community and how much power people have when they come together. And we were thousands of students getting together. In Puerto Rico, the university has 11 campuses, so it's a large system of universities around the whole island. And the largest university has right now, it should be less, but it was like 20,000 people or something like that. I was in the west side, so my school was like around 17,000 people or something like this. So it's like the second largest. And we closed the university like collectively and paralyzed the whole system for months. And it was beautiful in terms of we saw how, for example, for the first time, we were seeing how social media was a tool for us to get people places. And I was more as a bystander at that time. I was full on in favor of the strike, but at that time I wasn't involved in the socialist movement. I was more centered in going to Michigan trying to get my degrees and all that. But when I came back to Puerto Rico after I studied in Michigan, my master's, it was clear to me that was the time that I needed, and I had the time and the means and the privilege truly to sit down and understand many things about colonialism and about my own life and situation. And it also came with not only about socialism and Puerto Rico's independence movement and all that, it was also feminism and a lot of new ideas. So it was like a little revolution in my life at that time that happened. And I was like a newborn,
Yeah.
seeing the world for the first time in this many different perspectives that I had. And surely I think my understanding of the world right now has a lot to do with the history that I live in Puerto Rico and
Mhm.
how I was involved in that, and how I really tried to bring some of the stuff that I knew to Chicago as well. And I have been really close to many groups now in Chicago, but when I came to Chicago 2015, I started with a group of other Puerto Ricans from the island group that was called Chicago Boricua Resistance. Boricua is a term for Puerto Ricans as well.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, we were trying to bring the socialist perspective to the youth and Puerto Rican youth here in Chicago, which it has a whole history of its own. Of the independence movement here in Chicago is amazing. The Young Lords were here. It's a huge history, but it was also needing a refresh of ideas as well and new faces. And I think we tap into a lot of people that were looking for a new way of doing anti-colonialist, decolonizing ideas and how to help also with the movements in Puerto Rico. Stuff
Mhm.
like, for example, clearly with Hurricane Maria in 2017, that gave us a lot to protest about. It was truly amazing seeing how solidarity with other groups that we have, like people from diaspora, the Philippine diaspora, people from the Palestinian diaspora, other just Americans, other teachers that were part of the teachers union here in Chicago, and just like developing like a network of people. We were doing that for at least 6 years or something like that.
Okay.
The pandemic was something that held
Yeah.
everything, but until that time, we were really involved with everything that was happening in the island. We were having the ousting the governor in 2019, just before the pandemic. And that was a whole amazing experience that I was able to experience in the island and here in Chicago, and it was really cool.
Backing up just a little bit, you described it as you were like a newborn, and some of the realizations that you were coming to. If you can think back and remember, what were some of those things for you that you were realizing maybe for the first time at that point, or just understanding a little bit better that created that experience of feeling like, oh yeah, I'm like a newborn, and I'm sure one to also share those perspectives with other people too.
I can tell you, like, for example, when I was in college, I was a poli-sci, political science major, so it was all about politics and all that, and it was fun. But I never encountered stuff in a way that made sense to my personal life. So
Hmm.
more than reading any source of specific topic, it was more this idea that this stuff affected directly my life and how I go about it. When, for example, I remember simple stuff. I had read the Communist Manifesto in school 3 or 4 times. Couldn't understand it for my life. And it wasn't until I sat down with a group of socialist youth that I was able to not only understand it, but make the connections to what was happening in our daily lives. So it was truly defining. And but I guess one of those topics was very much the history of the independence movement in Puerto Rico, something that I didn't know. The independence movement is an old movement in Puerto Rico since before the US for sure. Understanding how we got to where we are and how people are thinking about, especially people thinking about the independence of Puerto Rico in different ways, truly got me thinking, why do we want independence? How is this independence going to come about? And how is it going to look like after we get independence? That was a lot of the questioning that I was doing at that time. And another important aspect was like ideas about feminism in terms of understanding the role of the power inequalities that were there, and truly that affected so much how I saw myself and how I saw others, because up to that point I feel like I wasn't truly, I didn't have access to that information until that time. And it was like truly all on board once I got it. You got, yeah, this is actually what's happening. That's happened all my life. I completely understand. Um, so I think those two ideas were the most salient at that time for sure.